Hello everyone, and welcome to Fleet's Catch-Up Ramblings. Yep, bang on time this Friday. Getting started right on the bell. Yeah, no waiting around today. Absolutely, properly up with it. Really, really on it today. So, I think Ruinon has actually... Yes, they have. Wow, that is not as many questions as I was expecting. It can't be it, surely. That cannot be it. That... Oh, that is it. Wow. Okay, that's short. Oh, I guess we'll inject some normal questions as well. I hope everyone's having a good day. Hello, Timu. Hello, Knight. Hello, Ruinon. It's a nice, chill Friday. Well, the weather's not chill. The weather's quite warm, and I'm having to shield my eyes a little bit. I need to put a blind up just for a certain period of day while the sun's not setting. Okay, that was a bit weird. Ah, the shipyard's here. Excellent, 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 excellent. Always a pleasure to have James here with us.
In a minute, I'm having some lunch.
Oh, well, you didn't have to come up. You could have waited. You could have waited. You didn't. Yes, Timu, I saw. It's nice. Right. So. I will also just check the document, actually, while I'm thinking about it, before we get started, just in case Ruinon has missed some. I don't think she will have done. Very thorough that she is. But I will just check the old document. Just in case.
And I'll inhale this pizza as fast as possible.
Right, so let's have a look. Meow. Ah, yeah, so Ruinon got them all. Fair enough, okay, but just thought I'd check. Right, so, without further ado, let's start working through some of these questions. So, on Discord, Typical Gunnery Officer asks, do you think the British already perfected their air assault doctrine with helicopters in the Malay Emergency way before the US was involved in Vietnam and perfected their heliborne assault techniques? Well, the thing with the Malay Emergency is that it's fundamentally a different conflict to Vietnam. The Malay Emergency was very much a lot of carrot with very, very, very careful application of very, very precise stick. So there wasn't so much heli assault operations going on as it was insertion of small... I think... Like, it's not so much heli assault as it was helicopter operations. Arguably, the UK cut its teeth on heli assault during the Suez Crisis. But the US really got an experience that no one else really did during the Vietnam War. no one else before in combat operations used helicopters on the scale the US did. Not even the British. The Malay Emergency was not really equivalent to Vietnam. I know everyone calls it Britain's Vietnam, but it really wasn't. It was a
continent.
Yeah, it was a different operation in its entirety, handled completely differently. The only reason people look and go, oh, Britain, jungle, helicopters, jet aircraft, fighting communists, yes, Britain's Vietnam. And you go, no. For one thing, the British were there at the request of the Malayan government, whereas South Vietnam was very much a not seen as an equal participant and was basically propped up by the US, whereas the British were just there to help the Malayan government secure itself post-independence and pave the way for it. I mean, Knight, the Malay Emergency showed one method of fighting counterinsurgency. The US method of fighting in Vietnam was never going to work. I feel that's far too much of a blanket statement. I think never going to work is... It's too close to a broad overgeneralization for my liking. I think had the US kept the pressure up, had the political will been there, they absolutely could have broken the North Vietnamese utterly. But, like I said, it's not so much that it couldn't work, it's that it didn't. The British told the US they could not win in Vietnam. That doesn't mean the British were right, Knight. That doesn't mean the British were right. The situation the British had in Malaya was fundamentally different to the situation the US was dealing with in Vietnam. Then, there are similarities between the two, but apart from the fact they're both fighting communist insurgencies, and it's a fundamentally different system. And they're dealing with fundamentally different ex-colonial rule situations. Like, the British have much more fertile ground to work with when it comes to dealing with the Malayan government. Especially since it's very much a close relationship and there was already a desire for independence. The waters in Vietnam were muddied by the Japanese, then further muddied by the French, then muddied by the split down the middle, and finally muddied by the US coming in. The problem fundamentally was that it was just a whole muddy situation. Knight, the British said the US couldn't win. No, that's not... Yeah, how quickly South Vietnam fell after the US pulled out. Yes. That was South Vietnam. Without US support. Not the United States. That's the fundamental thing everyone seems to forget. The US didn't so much lose the Vietnam War as it just chose to stop caring. Basically, that's what happened. The US chose to stop caring. The North Vietnamese didn't so much win the war in terms of militarily. They won it in terms of the US just couldn't be bothered to keep throwing men at the problem.
Yeah, the North Vietnam did the thing that you have to do in all insurgencies or asymmetrical wars. They didn't lose.
Yeah, this is the thing. The US, but neither did the US, to be fundamentally clear. They just shifted their strategic priorities. The South Vietnam...
Yeah, well...
South Vietnam lost. I mean, I'll absolutely admit to that. They got their teeth kicked in. But the US basically kind of realized, oh, you know, the domino theory doesn't really work. I think we don't have to be here anymore. Right, off we go.
Well, that and the war was unpopular enough back home politically that political support just got, annihilated.
Yeah, that as well. But it's not. It's not. The British weren't technically. I suppose you've got that. You've got that point, Wellesley. But I would argue that while the British were technically correct, they weren't correct for the reasons that they were saying. The US could absolutely win militarily, but the cost involved would have been extreme, but they lost diplomatically. But Vietnam and Malaya are not equivalent, so I would argue that the British standing on a high ground saying you're going to lose because you didn't do X, Y, Z, doesn't really apply to Vietnam. They're not the same conflicts. Yes, they're counterinsurgency, but the governments are different. The political will behind both sides are different. The history's different. You couldn't really apply the way the British fought the war in Malaya to Vietnam, because you're not gonna get the Vietnamese to betray the Viet Cong. Because as far as they're concerned, anybody who's not Vietnamese coming to them is, well, not seen to be working towards total Vietnamese independence, will be seen as a traitor and someone they're not willing to deal with. And that includes the South Vietnamese government. As far as many Vietnamese were concerned, all the South Vietnamese government was a continuation of the exact same collaborators who'd worked with the French. So you can't use the carrot and stick approach the British did in Malaya. The only way you win the Vietnam War is by continually hitting the North Vietnamese militarily and propping up South Vietnam, which is what the US did. And unless you're willing to do that forever, you don't win. So it's not that the US couldn't win, it's that they tried the only strategy that could grant them victory, and unfortunately, it didn't work. They did the best they could given the circumstances. It just, as it was probably always going to, didn't work. The British would have also failed in Vietnam.
Right, I'm back from burning my mouth with spicy pizza.
Right, so next question. Brandon Larson, what if the USN and RN ships prior to World War II are swapped? What are each navy's respective reactions, and how do they go about fighting World War II? Both sides now fundamentally lack the fleets they need to fight the conflict. I'm sorry, but that's basically it.
Because they're going to be like, where are my cruisers? I can't keep me anywhere.
Yeah, where are my armoured carriers? I can't operate in the Mediterranean without them. Where are my tribal class destroyer? Where are my T-boats? What are these large fleet boats? The US says I can't use these in the Med. Like, politely, Brandon Larson, I'm sorry to say this, but if you swap the USN and the RM prior to World War II, the first thing that happens is that crews immediately go over and bring them back. If you want the honest answer, because fundamentally each side's ships do not work with the other's doctrine. The Royal Navy now has no fast capital ships. That opens a massive critical hole in their operational doctrine. It basically gives the German raiders total and complete free reign to do whatever the heck they feel like, as the British now have no assets that can catch and kill them.
I would say that the United States Naval Command is very happy with the Royal Navy fleet. I don't think they're going to complain much at all. They're probably going to wonder why is the fuel system so ludicrously overbuilt on their carriers, and why does every cruiser have sonar or ASDIC? But I don't think the USN is going to complain much about getting the Royal Navy fleet.
Honestly, Knight, the standards are slow, but they're no slower than the Revengers on a bad day. The problem is that lack of mid-tier capital assets that's really going to... It is going to be the capital ships that the Royal Navy is going to be screaming aggressively and trying to change around.
let's put it this way: if this goes through, Churchill's capital asset pause
Doesn't
is
happen.
never going to happen.
Yeah, it fundamentally does not happen. I mean, the German until the RN can inject itself with its own ships again, the German surface raiders are basically going to have a field day. I'm sorry, they absolutely are.
Do we get the Americans' weapon systems as well? So
Presumably.
bloody torpedoes
Yeah,
don't work.
yeah, that also. Yeah, you'd probably presume.
Yeah, but you guys actually do live fire testing, so you'll probably cache it and fix it long before we do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Problem is though, that's gonna really hurt Royal Navy operations.
Mm-hmm. Was the air launched torpedo from the Americans called? Was it a derivative of the?
Oh,
Yes.
you've got the unholy trio: the Mark 13 destroyer shipboard launched weapon, the Mark 14 submarine launched weapon, and the Mark 15 air launched weapon. The
And they all
unholy,
use the same exploder.
yeah, the unholy trio of oh dear God, why?
Thanks for reminding me of the designations. Could you imagine a swordfish biplane trying to go up against the Bismarck with a Mark 15?
Oh yeah, I had a good week, Bratman. Thank you. Yeah, it's not worth thinking about, is it? But yeah,
I
politely.
either quit or got fired. I don't know which one I was.
Well, either way, you're out, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Bismarck would survive longer.
Bismarck
Well,
just
regardless, it's
well, no,
longer.
Bismarck just survives. Period.
Yeah, basically.
Like I'm sorry, there are no assets in place to catch her.
No.
I mean,
Sad.
the Reggio Marina as well has a field day. They can run fast convoys, to North Africa. They can do drive-bys of Malta, because fundamentally the British just with Littorios, because fundamentally the British battle fleet in the Med just can't deal with them.
Although what you probably do see, because now the Royal Navy is a majority 16-inch fleet,
It's not.
if they take all the USN's pre-war heavy capital assets, they have more 16s than they did historically.
Only by
Two or three. They got 2 or 3 more hulls that are armed with 16s.
no, they've only got one. They've only got one
What?
more.
I thought we built.
3 Colorados, yeah. Yeah, you had 3 Colorados.
Okay, so
We had 2 Nelsons.
Okay, Sodax are. Didn't Sodax get commissioned pre-war? Because you had the Sodax, North Carolinas, and the Islands.
None of the U.S. fast battleships commissioned pre-war.
Huh.
I think.
I thought the Sodax.
I
I thought
will.
the Sodax just made it.
No,
I'm just checking with you.
one of the North Carolinas might have done.
Oh, I got my order reversed. Whoops.
In
No,
service from
no,
41.
yeah, no, none of the U.S. So both sides are going to get their fast battleships they historically got.
Okay. Although the KG5s will probably be chambered in the U.S. 14-inch round.
No, it's
Ooh,
more.
14-inch 45.
The problem is fundamentally you're probably more likely to see the US ships get British rounds, because the British are already set up for that 14-inch shell. So you're more likely to see the British gradually swap the barrels of the 14-inch ships. Same thing with the standards with the 16s; they'll swap them for the Nelson's guns if they can.
Yeah, I guess it does depend on how much of the supporting infrastructure switches over.
Because here's the thing: you've got none of the supporting infrastructure. So the thing to do is you're gradually going to see that the hulls will remain the same, the engine plants will remain the same until overhauls come along, at which point they'll probably be tweaked. But basically, as ammunition runs down, you'll see gradual switching over of guns.
I like these questions. They always make you go into like a massive rabbit hole about how it wouldn't really work.
I mean, there's fundamentally. Okay, the RN's going to have very nice heavy cruisers to counter the St. Louis are basically ideal counters to the Graf Space. Like the St. Louis class cruisers, those are just like that is just. Or is it the St. Louis? I'm thinking of. I might be thinking of.
Are we talking about
So Louis is the successor to the Brooklyn.
No, sorry, I'm thinking of the. I'm sorry, correction. I'm thinking of. Yeah, I'm thinking of the New Orleans and the Wichita. Yeah, the New Orleans and Wichita. Like those, like those ships, like that because the earlier heavy cruisers are, to be honest, the British are going to look at them and go, no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, lads, but
That's a light cruiser with opinions of grandeur.
yeah. So basically, from the Portland class onwards, they're going to be able to be used as heavies. But Northampton and the Pensacola's, they're going to be like, no, you have failed the armor vibe check. No, sorry.
Now, that's saying New Orleans has any sort of armor.
They have enough armor that the RN's happy using
No,
them.
no. None of the tree cruiser has enough armor.
I think the bottom line for this question is the USN is happy as a pig in shit, and the RN is crying into its pints night after night.
Yeah, especially with the carrier. The carriers are the worst thing. Yeah, I mean, congratulations, you've got 2 Yorktowns and 2 Lexingtons, but you are fundamentally... But you're fundamentally lacking the armoured carrier tonnage you need to operate in some of the theatres the RN is operating in. You put a US carrier in the Med at the height of the air threat, that is a dead carrier.
Ranger was operating in the Med.
Western Med. She was in the safest part of the Med it was possible to be in. She got lucky, fundamentally. She should have been blown to Kingdom Come. Subs. The problem with subs as well is you've got the Mark 14 and you've also got the... I mean, the US are going to be fairly happy with the cruiser subs. They're going to be fairly happy with those. The problem is the large fleet boats they're not going to be happy with. Well, they'll be happy with them for the Pacific and the North Atlantic, but you better believe the S-boats are basically all going to be concentrated in the Med. The RN is going to look at the S-boats, and they are all going to end up in the Med. The S-boat zone. They're the only US subs that A, have working torpedoes at the start of the war, and B, are small enough that they work in the Med.
Fleet, I've
Yes.
got some good news for you.
Oh.
So, the US don't get it all their way, because in theory, they'd get Argus and Eagle as aircraft carriers.
Well,
How
I mean,
much
that- I
use
mean-
would those be?
the thing is, the US has always maintained their carriers at 30 knots and above. All of them. Even Ranger. So the US is going to look at those ships and they're going to go, these are of no use. Well, not of no use, but they are second-line vessels.
Mm-hmm.
The real prizes for the US is going to be Courageous, Glorious, Furious, and Art Royal. So the US, the US is going to have an injection of extra tonnage with Hornet. And then, of course, the Fletcher Swarm was coming online. I mean, fundamentally, neither fleet's really happy here. That's the whole thing. I think we've hit this question over the head. I think we've really given that a good shake. So, moving swiftly on. Admiral Wellesley. For some reason, the Admiralty has gone temporarily insane. Has actually designed a large cruiser to respond to the Panzer ships. What do you design? Must not use guns larger than 12 inches. Must be fast enough to chase down the Panzer ships. Everything else is up to you. Oh, that's really easy. 16,000 tons, 12 8-inch guns in 3 triple turrets, armoured to resist 8-inch guns along its entire length, with an immunity zone to 11-inch over the magazines. and boiler rooms. Capable of 32 knots ideally, 35 if we can really push the turbine power into them. And armoured with, and basically AA in secondaries like 4-inch dual-purpose secondary battery and a bunch of pom-poms. You don't
Basically,
need... You
how
don't...
people want to build their heavy cruisers.
Yeah, you don't need... it's one of the things that, like, you know, the whole Battle of River Plate proved. The way you beat Panzerschiff is with a good, well-rounded heavy cruiser.
No.
Well,
Battle of the River Plate proves is that that if your enemy brings one cruiser, you bring a cruiser squadron.
well, yes, I know that,
Yeah.
but in a one-on-one fight, I'm saying... Well, no, what I mean is you can... This is also... I'm also basically using this as a
You
way
can,
to...
but it's the Panzer Chief's fight to lose.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm... Well,
But it's easy to forget that the Panzer Chief had the heavy cruiser dead to rights.
it
Can you
did...
call Exeter a proper heavy cruiser because she's a heavy cruiser on a budget.
Yeah, she's really not. Like, honestly, if it'd even been a county would have rocked bloody
proper
Graf
county
Space.
would've-
Yeah, would have absolutely rocked Graf Space world. Well, it would have been a fair fight, which is obviously not what you want. I'm basically building something that just goes up and says, you're dead and you're going to die, and there is no way I lose this fight.
Yeah, so, but is the question talking about within the treaty limits building a ship to do this, or what the Royal Navy would want?
What the Royal Navy would want, that's why I've gone for 12 8-inch guns. 32
Have you seen
knots.
HMS Drake from World of Warships?
I am not using
The
9.2-inch guns.
Oh, so we're not bringing the Churchill
Why
Special to this.
Why not? Because, to be perfectly frank with you, we've got modern 8-inch. 8-inch is enough. It's a caliber we are still using in the RN. I'd rather have 12 8-inch than 9.2. The rate of fire will be slightly faster, and it saves weight for armor and speed.
So, you're going to use the county's 8-inch.
Probably develop a gun
Old
off.
low velocity 8-inch.
It worked, didn't it?
Because the next generation 8-inch isn't compatible with the county's 8-inch ammo.
Yeah.
Well, the 8-inch on the counties worked, didn't it?
Not really.
No, not really.
I mean,
They're old.
8-inch on the county was deemed to be equivalent hitting-wise and penetrative-wise to the slightly later 6-inch.
Well, yes, but we can use more modern 8-inch then. Nothing wrong with that. The Royal Navy has plans for it.
But then go to 9.2-inch.
No, it's unneeded. I'm not going to jump
It's
up a
not.
caliber because you don't need to.
Yeah, but we still have 9.2-inch ammunition in surplus.
But
Yep.
there's no
9.2-inch.
there is no point jumping up caliber. Your rate of
There
fire,
is.
your rate of
It's
fire
just always
goes
a
down.
point.
No.
Calibers.
Okay. So the rate of fire for the 9.2s was comparable in testing to the rate of fire for the county's 8-inch.
Yes, but with modern triple 8-inch
It's a
guns,
much
we
higher
could-
velocity gun
What the hell are you?
with a much
Mind me.
with quite a considerable larger bursting charge and
We
higher
don't
velocity.
need it.
We do. The county's 8-inch
Please.
struggled.
I'm not talking
Bleep,
about the
bleep,
county's
bleep,
8-inch.
Bleep. Are you saying that you want to have a fair fight?
No,
That you've been given a blank check and you want to set it up to have a fair fight?
What? No, a 12 8-inch gun ship is overkill. It'll smash a
It's
Panzer
not,
ship
though.
to dust.
It's
Yeah,
not.
but
That's the thing.
It
A
is.
9.2 will do it with greater aplomb.
Not really.
She'll do it quicker. She has more firepower. She has more heavier weight firepower, and she's also a better ship. You will dominate a fight with the bigger guns, because in this case, yeah, granted, it's not the size; it's how you use it. But in this case, the caliber is good, and it's how you use it will kill it. It'll
Apparently,
die.
Wellesley is
A burning
saying
death.
part of the question is being neglected right now. Did you read the entire question?
I did.
No.
It said,
Wellesley, you better.
for some reason, the Admiralty has temporarily gone insane and has asked you to design a large cruiser to respond to the Panzer ships. What do you design? It must not use guns larger than 12 inches, which we're not. Must be fast enough to chase down the Panzer ships, which I said 32 knots, so it is. Everything else is up to you. but I don't think we've gone outside of that question at all, have I? I've not done anything outside of those parameters, have I, guys?
No.
We'll see whether Wellesley agrees or not.
I mean, even
Well, what?
even the 9.2-inch gun suggestion is still not outside the parameters.
It's still well within the
Yeah.
parameters.
Like that. Oh, hi, Rishi. That's like that is well within the parameters. Okay, all right, fair enough. I was actually not aware.
you go.
I was not aware quite how bad the County's 8-inch guns are, and if the 9-inch really does have that level of rate of fire, then I'm actually I thought the rate of fire would drop by about a couple of seconds, which can matter. But no, if Foxo is saying that the rate of fire is actually there is no real difference, then there is no downside to having.
There's
Generally, I will also presume that
there's a small
9.2 has-
reducement in sustained rate of fire, but
There's-
That's
compared to the
That's
County.
acceptable. That's
Yeah, but the big thing is I will also presume 9.2 also has a further reach than 8-inch.
there is that as well.
Well,
Yeah.
it's got over 100 meters per second high velocity.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, 9. Honestly, do you know what I'm going to do, actually? I'm going to change it up. I'm going to go for 8 9.2 in nice, roomy turrets to allow for the maximum level, to enable the maximum level of automation and ease of loading for the guns.
Now, what are you gonna do for the armor scheme?
8-inch resistant for its entire length, from front of the bar, like from the forward barbette of the forward turret to the back, and then an immunity zone for 11-inch that the Deutschlands carry over the magazines and the.
I would suggest deep
boilers.
magazine boxes like the Brooklands, kind of like that, or the early counties as well.
I
I
mean-
think the counties had deep magazine boxes.
I mean, the thing with that is
Okay.
we don't really have to, because we have no displacement limit, so I can really afford to be. I can afford an actual solid 11-inch immunity zone over the magazines and the boiler rooms, and then I can have an 8-inch immunity belt along the rest of the ship.
Okay,
Yeah,
but at that point, why don't we just go with battlecruiser all or nothing armor scheme?
just
Well,
a
no,
Dunkirk.
that's what we are doing. That's what we are doing. We're doing
Yeah,
advanced.
basically just
We're
do a
doing
Renown or a
advanced.
Dunkirk.
No, we're going with an advanced all or nothing, because I still don't want to go into battlecruiser territory. So I'm still accepting that I'm not going to resist the 11-inch at all angles and ranges outside of the magazines and the boiler rooms. But I am still gonna be resistant enough that 8-inch cruisers are just gonna cry, as they just
Do you want
can't
to
deal
add
with
torpedo
me.
tubes?
I probably am gonna carry at least 2 quads either side of midships. Probably leave a good bit of
Okay,
space
how many-
around them.
And how many 4.5s?
I'm probably, depending on if I'm designing
Six
this.
aside.
If I'm designing this with the Deutschland counter in mind, it's not going to be 4.5. I'm going to be using. It's going to be 4-inch. So, but I'm probably going to go with 8 per side, 4 twins.
Why the hell are you using 4-inch?
Because it's cheaper, it's quicker, saves more weight, and it's still a handy dual-purpose caliber.
Fleet, I've just tagged you in something in Discord that I think you might want to have a look at before you finish your answer.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm thinking. Actually, funnily enough, that ship, but switch out the triple 8-inch for twin 9.2. I mean, honestly, it's basically whatever. It's basically whatever's more available at the time. If it's 4-inch, we'll go with 8 4-inch. If it's 4.5, we'll go with 6 4.5 per side.
To be honest, I'd be for something that's going to be a hunter killer for Panzerschiff. I'd be inclined to go all forward.
It's not honestly, given how those engagements can go, you need the flexibility of rear arc, main battery fire, because those engagements can develop into stern chasers. They can develop into front chasers. They can be swirling engagements like River Plate was. You need the flexibility of rear arc, main battery availability.
Okay, so if I send this photo, is it playing more akin to what you're looking at?
No, again, like I said, the thing I'm thinking of is actually the previous design. You just swap the 12 8-inch for 8 9.2. It's reasonable in terms of displacement. It's reasonable in terms of firepower. You've got nice, roomy 9.2-inch turrets to work the guns, which will hopefully help mitigate that lack of sustained rate of fire Foxo was talking about. Because if you've got more room to work in the chamber, you can keep up that sustained rate much better.
Right.
Okay.
And
I have a-
8
I
9
have
point.
a-
Yeah.
Essentially, you're just asking for Goliath for Mother Warships.
Kind of, yeah. I suppose if you want to think, but less secondaries, but kind of, yeah.
I have a completely unrelated topic for the Brits in this voice chat. Do British
on.
drivers lose what little driving capability they have on a good day as soon as it starts raining, like they
No.
do in the U.S.?
No.
Depends, really.
Okay.
Depends
If
where
we
you
did
are.
that, and you weren't in London, you would die immediately because everywhere's constantly wet.
Oh, got it. Got your perfect one, Fleet.
Oh boy, here we go.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at that Churchill
Ignore the
Cruiser
flag.
Design C, and that's too much. See, that's too little. That's not enough gun. That's
God's
only
sake.
6 gun. I keep telling you, we've already found the ideal one. It's just the top one, but with 8 9.2. But I think we've hit the nail on the head with this. Honestly, you know what, Bill?
Are you turning into an American?
Honestly, like
Yes.
literally, like my build out would be 4 ships. 4 ships of the class. Probably lay them down. Basically, so I assume I'm doing this as the treaties are collapsing. So 4 ships. Try get them laid down quick as we can. Ideally, get at least the first pair into service before the war, all 4 if we can, but if not, first pair into service just before the war starts. And at that point, because they're extra to the RN's wartime fleet, when Graf Spey is slipping into the Atlantic, you just go, okay, shadow her. And one of those plus honestly, by itself, one of those can just shadow Graf Spey, and as soon as war kicks off, move in for the kill. And that will be a fight that ship will win.
An asset like that's probably going to have a couple of destroyers attached.
It depends on range, but yes.
Are you fitting her out with radar as standard?
Depends on if it's available. If it's available when they're being constructed, yes, I will be. If it's not, then well.
Because if we're thinking about that, if you're going to send her out against Graf Spey, she can go dark in the middle of the night, slip away from her, and then she's gone. Which then kind of negates the entire idea of sending her to sea against Graf Spey and shadowing her.
That's true. That's a good point. Because if they don't
I
have
think
range,
you'd want to have 2 to go after her, because if, say for instance, the one cruiser needs to go into a port to refuel, that's a perfect time for Graf Spey to go, bye!
yeah, because Graf Spey will have the legs to do that. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. Fair enough. So we'll probably have it. So honestly, if you've got a pair, you'll probably have. Yeah, basically, well, either way, you'd have them in a. I think you'd probably have one at River Plate. You need to have Graf Spey caught before she breaks into the South Atlantic, or you'd have a ship, one of these, making its way south to join Admiral Harwood, and then at that point probably be around the River Plate, and if Admiral probably over the horizon. So Langsdorff will make the same calculation he did historically, move in, and then as soon as Harwood says have been engaged, have locked the enemy into an engagement, one of these cruisers comes tearing over the horizon at 32 knots, and suddenly that's it. There is no retreat to Montevideo. There is, you are dying now.
Where was Spey when war was declared?
Pardon?
How far down was Spey when war was declared?
I'm not sure. I know she topped off her tanks and her ammunition from the tanker literally hours before the war began. So she was basically fully combat fit when it started.
I just see one issue with this entire thing, though, Fleet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Royal Navy essentially gave them a pocket battle cruiser.
I mean, I know.
Nice attempt.
I know. It's basically the.
My thought is, wouldn't they have it operating with the battle cruisers?
No, it's what you've basically given them is you've basically given them capital ship for areas where we need things that aren't like. It's basically a fast capital asset that doesn't have to be tied to things like tying down the German capital ships. So you can have one in the South Atlantic, you can have one in the Indian Ocean, you can have a pair in the Pacific. But basically,
No, you know what
Hear me out.
this is just a
Hear me out.
first-class armored cruiser.
Hear me out. These are some of the Royal Navy's few ships that will be capable of keeping up with Renown, and technically Repulse.
well, how
Renown
fast
and
are they?
Repulse taking on the
How fast are they?
Scharnhorst class.
How fast are they
If
after
we're
their
going off your
rebuild?
32 knots.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Renown's 32 knots.
Hmm.
So, well, 32 knots. Officially.
Okay.
Quote unquote 32.
And we also know that she went past the kind of race down after Grash Bay.
Hmm.
And the thing is, if one of these engages a Scharnhorst that's come out, Renown and Scharnhorst, it's a pretty equal fight. Why? So wouldn't you have the two large cruisers you've got that can keep up with Renown and Repulse, in case the Scharnhorst try and do anything funny?
Probably not, because these ships have got other things to be doing. Basically,
Such as?
well,
No,
basically,
not really. That is literally what the battle cruiser should be doing.
well,
Yeah.
yes, but these aren't. I get what Foxo's saying, but I'd also like to hypothesize another thing. What you've basically got here is you've got capital ship. Honestly, I can see them in pairs taking the place of Renown and Repulse, doing things that Renown and Repulse did. So, for example, in Force H, I can see them two of them being in the place of Renown,
So,
freeing her up to do
sorry, what guns do these have?
9.2s.
9.2s. 8 of them. Like, and as a pair of ships, they have an immunity zone over their magazines.
No chance in hell. The Royal Navy wouldn't take that. The Royal Navy wouldn't take that risk. They are not deemed equivalent force, even two of them.
Well, no.
There's a reason you said about it. Also, the Germans won't be scared of them. The thing about Renown and Repulse, those 15s can hurt Scharnhorst enough that
You didn't let me finish,
it's
Dragon.
unfeasible.
You didn't let me finish.
Because it's kind of silly. They wouldn't.
You didn't let
use
me
these to
finish.
replace
Hunting
Valkyries.
Panzer Sheaf, Dragon. It's about hunting Panzer Sheaf.
You didn't let me finish my full point, which I was going to make. If you put them in Force H to work with Ark Royal or whatever carrier is in Force H as a rapid reaction force, you free up the Renowns from having to operate in that role, which frees them up to very carefully watch for shit like Scharnhorst and Gneisenau doing funny things out of Brest, or other German fast assets operating out of the North Sea. This is the thing. They're not replacing Renown and Repulse as equivalents in Force H. They're freeing those assets up to go and do exactly what you've just said. They're going to go and basically be on Overwatch now.
No, you're not.
No, because right, Fleet. Realistically, here's my counter.
You've not.
What I think would end up happening should have two going to reinforce Renown, Force H.
Mm.
You would free up Repulse because the Royal Navy really doesn't want Repulse going against anything particularly modern at this point. And then you get two of them going to the Mediterranean fleet, Alexandria. Because as far as the British would be concerned, those Italian heavy cruisers look nasty.
There is that. Yeah, that's actually, they are good for sweeping up cruisers. But
Which means that you probably get a Repulse running after Graf's Bay. And that's their biggest contribution.
I don't see it. Like I said, Repulse's 15-inch guns can be used to do other things that the 9.2s can't. Whereas the 9.2s can deal with Grash Bay handily. They're without the need for Repulse. I do think you're right.
Guns.
I do think you're right on the med. I think you're absolutely dead on there. It would also be a much needed injection of firepower into the med. I think they would rotationally be in Force H. I don't think it would be a permanent posting. I think you would have one or two there at any given time, but they usually... I don't think there would be a permanent presence of one of the 4 members of the class in Force H. I think they would be there like for a month or two to bulk it up in case of crisis, or as they're rotating through to other deployments. I just had Knight on YouTube saying that the 2 of them will be with Holland at the Denmark Strait. I fundamentally disagree. It will still be Norfolk and Suffolk, simply because they are far too valuable assets to just have shadowing Bismarck. Like, Norfolk and Suffolk can do
most
that.
likely won't be out on patrol. They would most
Yeah.
likely be utilized as in being.
One of
resource.
them might be with... One or two of them might be with Prince of Wales and Hood to square off against Hipper during Denmark Strait.
Assuming they're in the home fleet.
Yeah, but I don't think...
Right. Can I just explain the reason I think that there 2 would stick in the Med, 2 would stick with Force H?
Okay.
Because a lot of Force H's early work was watching in case the Italians were actually do funny in the Western Mediterranean. The fleet in Alexandria was Eastern Mediterranean. I think they're going to keep 2 either side of the Mediterranean because they fundamentally can't safely transit them through it. And if the Japanese heavy cruisers start throwing hands towards Gibraltar, especially when Rodney's run off to do Rodney things, which he does relatively often.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. Honestly, I don't think... I'll tell you what, Voxel, I'll meet you
And
halfway. I'll meet you halfway. I think they'd be in Gibraltar, but I don't think they'd be in Force H.
Fair, but can I just explain why the Royal Navy didn't value Repulse as 15 inches as well as Renown's 15 inches?
Mm-hmm.
Because what I said about the 2 battlecruisers works for Renown. She's arguably too valuable to go running off after cruisers, so it's what she does. But the issue with Repulse is they're the unmodernized 15-inch guns. They don't have the superchargers. She's fully unmodernized, which means she's the one that would reliably lose to a Scharnhorst. Renown's the one that would probably reliably win.
Yeah.
The capital ships I would put Repulse and the Royal Navy put Repulse's winning against weren't the pre-dreadnoughts. The Dunkirks, which even that I question. So
Yeah.
from the Royal Navy's, and the reason why the Royal Navy aren't so shook up on losing her in Force Z is because by that point they don't view her as a capital asset. She's not like Renown, she can't go against small capital ships.
The thing...
They're more
So,
strict.
so freeing up her to go running off after Pangersleeves. It's like taking an old dog for a walk. She'll go for it.
Mm.
But you can't use her to contain a Scharnhorst or contain anything in the Mediterranean because she just doesn't have the AA, she doesn't have the modernized gun, she doesn't have the modernized armor scheme. She doesn't have radar.
She's a bit like a floating wet wipe.
Yeah.
So I think
She's
they-
actually, her hull's
Oh,
in
well.
pretty shit condition. So the only thing she really could hunt is Deutschland. Which is there in the IRL they sent
Yeah.
Renown after the Deutschland.
Going slightly to the beginning. You know, Deutschland and Grash Bay were both at the sea at the same time before war was declared.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Killing Deutschland
So you
before she has
don't
a chance to be turned into Lutzow would be funny.
Well,
Declares
Actually,
war. Declares war. Loses Deutschland.
Declares war, loses Germany.
Yeah, just like...
Hitler's diffie goes very soft very quickly.
yeah.
yeah, so Graf leaves Wilhelmshaven on the 21st of August, and then Deutschland sails on the 24th of August from Gotthaven.
Mark
Deutschland
Harkness,
goes to Denmark, right?
the war's on. By the time these ships are in, the war's on, and there is no room or time to send Repulse in for a rebuild.
War's declared and she cannot be spared.
Basically. And also, there's no yard space for her anyway. If there had been, the British wouldn't have had to been lobbing ships over to the US and paying stonks of cash to get them to do the rebuilds. Depends how hush-hush the British keep these new cruisers, Brackman.
No, they would still also they would still pay a lot of money to use the US yards.
Well, no, I know, but what I mean is, Repulse, despite her age, is still one of only 3 fast capital ships in the RN.
Well, 2 by the time this happens.
Yeah, but I just failed to see why they wouldn't still keep using them at as many of the American yards as they can buy.
That's not what I'm saying, Dragon, at all.
That's not the point.
Well, no, you did say about trying to lessen the US yards there.
No, I didn't. That's not what I said at all.
Is this about Repulse getting refitted in an American yard?
No, it's about Repulse getting refitted at all.
She's not going to get refitted.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said, A, she can't be
Because
spared.
look how long Renown's refit took.
Yeah, I said, A, she can't be spared. B, the British don't have the yards. So at that point, the calculation becomes extremely easy for them. I know they could theoretically use a US yard, but she also can't be spared, so, well, there you are.
She's a 3-year rebuild away.
Mm-hmm. Well, no,
Because
she's freed up from some of the other duties she had to do. She's freed up to do other duties.
Right, one of the reasons Repulse wasn't rebuilt was because the British... The Renown and Repulse had some really weird engine spaces. Like, properly... Essentially, especially once you get to Renown's rebuild, they're not so much... What's the phrase for a really overcomplicated design for a simple thing?
You've pretty much said over-engineered.
Rube Goldberg.
Yeah, no, to get what you need, they actually had to massively Rube Goldberg her machinery. And...
Is that an American saying?
And it took them that long to get it working with access to the people who built that machinery. Sort of, they looked at taking it to American yards, and it was just a case of the Americans are going to be doing this from scratch because Repulse needs brand new machinery. She needs brand new 15-inch guns. Arguably, she needs the turrets replaced. She needs a lot of work redone. It's not so much, but it's the work she needs done would essentially be what happened to the Congos or what happened to Renown. Or it's a full rebuild.
Do you mind if I be devil's advocate here?
Go for it.
Go on.
Well, as they've done Renown at this point. In theory, the lessons learned from Renown can speed up the process for sorting out Repulse. In theory.
I tend to agree.
Be, what, maybe 1.5
Also,
years?
If you don't do a full rebuild and basically do a swap the boilers out, get new guns, you can cut it down quite significantly.
Not to an extent where it's viable.
The issue is it's not Renown's it's not Renown's boilers that are the issue with their machinery. A lot of the factors from what I've read, admittedly, Clark's probably got this a lot better than me. It was a lot more to do with the fact that they'd be giving this to a yard that's never worked on this, has never done British machinery, never mind this level. Like, if they got her into the same yards that they did for Renown, like they wanted to do without the war going on, I agree it would have been a lot quicker. The issue is giving it to the Americans, and that loss of a lot got lost in translation, if you get what I mean. But yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, next question, please. We're beating it to the pulp.
Typical Gunnery Officer asks, do you think that Jean Bar can absolutely annihilate USS Massachusetts in a one-on-one engagement if Jean Bar was fully operational with a full complement, full crew complement and ammunition? No, that's not how battleship
Not
fights work.
Absolutely annihilate. No.
I mean, both ships
Massachusetts?
both ships are absolutely capable of sinking the other in a one-on-one fight. Unfortunately, because it is a one-on-one fight, politely, there is so much up in the air in regards to chance that if you ran that fight 25 different times, chances are you'd get 25 slightly different outcomes.
And to be honest with you, first round hit from Massachusetts, because Massachusetts is Sodak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A first round hit from Massachusetts is going to be far more impactful than a first round hit from John Bart.
Not that
Not
much.
particularly.
No,
Really?
no, not
The
really.
burster charges are practically the same. So yeah.
So then where's the difference come down to the 15 to 16 inch shells? If the charge the internals
There's
are
one more 16-inch, and the penetration is
Slightly better.
no. John Bart penetrates more vertical armor, but I don't think they're going to be fighting at ranges where Jean Bart's deck is going to be penetrated like it happened in real life.
Yeah, this
So
is
it's
this
kind
is
of
the
come
thing.
down to
I mean,
Okay.
it just comes down who
lose his
would
guns
have
first.
the better fire control.
Yeah, it's this is what I mean. It's
60%. I'll give three. I'll give four. 6 out
60-40.
of 6 out of 10. Yeah, 60-40 to the Americans.
honestly, I am more inclined to lean 55-45 in favor of the Americans.
I don't know.
It's
What? Like, it's 50-50. Let's be real.
I'll give Massachusetts a slight edge because I know what's wrong with Jean Bart.
even if she's fully
it-
even if she's fully capable, it's still the US ship does have one extra gun and
Yeah.
is slightly more heavily protected.
Yeah.
But
Like-
it's
I don't know.
big
Protection
enough
wise,
to matter.
it's also kind of equal.
Yeah, it's honestly it's like I
Well,
say,
the turrets
it's
are better protected on
it's like I
Massachusetts.
always say, one-on-one fights between roughly equivalent ships, toss a coin. There's no way to fundamentally answer the question. We will literally just tell you it's too close to call.
Jean Bart is faster, isn't she?
No, yeah,
Yes,
by
yes.
like 5 knots.
Mhm. And she can sustain that. So she did at like full load. She did 32.06 knots.
Versus what, the 28 of the South Dakota? So 4-knot advantage.
something like that.
That doesn't really matter in a one-on-one fight. Speed advantage.
Yes,
don't
it does.
Yeah,
it
Yes,
does.
it does.
So
It allows you to control the battle range and the battle spacing.
not in a ship
is
like
something that-
Jean Bar. She can't shoot
Yes.
over her shoulder.
Yes, she can. Do you realize how far back those two turrets can shoot?
Ah, yes, let me blow
Yeah,
out all the
it-
bridge windows and knock my fire control out.
Yeah,
Every
but no,
time
she
an-
was designed to fire
No,
over the
fire
shoulder.
control is
No.
fire control is way up there.
Yeah,
it can-
she's
But it's
not gonna
really
fire
hard
out
to
fire
manage. It's not a Nelson class issue.
Yeah,
Like
and
they
to-
genuinely
and-
can get them all the way over.
It's still gonna
And-
hurt the crews on
and-
manning the AA guns.
And to be frank, if you are in a life or death slugging match with an enemy battleship and your best tactical positioning is to be headed away from them, you don't care about the portholes.
Yeah.
Like it's generally a it's genuinely
You tell the
a
crew
non-issue.
tell the crew get the hell off the AA guns because the main battery's about to fire. All crew who's near a window, go away.
How would the
Right.
A even be?
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have. You'd probably have them and you'd have them in action stations, but wouldn't have them actually manning the AA guns necessarily. If it's just a duel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's also the reason why I say it's 50-50 as well is because forgive me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Jean Bart have a lot more dead space, so to say?
reserve points,
if you get hit there, it's not immediately fatal.
all like this.
Yeah, the Sodaks are essentially vacuum formed to get them into their treaty.
They're very compact, yes.
Listen, I would actually give a slight advantage to John Bart.
Yeah, the more we're talking about this, the more I'm looking at it and saying, as
Also,
much as I don't want to
Alice-
sass the mass.
Also, one thing to keep in mind, we know from, for example, Boise being hit by a Japanese 8-inch shell in her mag, that is going to blow her up. And we know that Gneisenau was hit by a bomb which exploded in her mag, and that only deflagrated the mag. It didn't blow up the ship. And the powder composition of French powder is practically a copy of this German powder. So we can safely assume that the French powder also isn't going to explode the ship.
So even if it gets hit in the magazine, more than likely you've lost the turret. You've not lost the
definitely
ship.
lost the turret.
But at that point, you've basically.
But at
that
But
point,
it's
if you've.
I'm just saying, there's also level.
Yeah, but at that point, John Bart runs away and uses its speed advantage.
Yes,
So
but
it would
yeah,
still
but
lose,
still-
but it still can live.
For the main battery, we're not talking about the main battery hit detonating here though, because a
Well, no, that's
secondary
just
magazine
a
going
factor.
up. Yeah, but it's also so essentially it boils down to 50-50.
I would more say
John
55-40. I would say 55-45 in John Bart's favour.
I'm sticking with my. I'm sticking with my original.
I'm gonna stick with 60-40 in Massachusetts' favor, just because of the extra gun, and I believe in American damage control more than French one.
And also politely, if
Why people want to avoid 1v1 questions?
yes, and also and also politely, if both sides are fighting a 1v1, they're seeking the engagement. Yes, Jean Barr could control it, but there's no range arc in which if one ship is firing, the other one isn't.
Not necessarily true, but
I mean,
But back to the original
It's just
question, it's
fundamentally-
not going to be an absolute annihilation
Yes.
on either side.
yeah.
It's
They're
going to be a
fairly
slugging match.
equivalent.
So to summarize, what we've established is that Massachusetts has more guns that hit harder, and
Mhm.
we know that she can hit well with them.
Yes.
But her design's very much got a glass jaw.
Well,
not
I wouldn't say
really.
glass jaw, but it's
Well, no,
compact.
compared to Jean Bart, she's got a glass jaw.
Not really.
Almost any hit to her will be a serious hit. Jean Bart has.
No.
yeah, I would actually tend to. Right, no, I get what Fox was. Right, basically, Fox was saying Jean Bart actually has a lot more places where if you get hit by a 16-inch shell,
You're
it's
not
nowhere
immediately
near as
knocked out.
it's not as catastrophic as on a South Dakota where getting hit by even a 15-inch shell will immediately go right. So we just lost quite a lot of stuff. Remember,
Yeah.
the South Dakotas aren't great designed.
I
Yeah.
no. I'm gonna I'm gonna have to
Because-
stop you right.
Fleet.
Shut up and listen a sec.
Mhm.
They are good designs, but they are bad at the same time because they compromise on a lot to get what they have. Jean Bart compromises less to have what it has because it initially didn't aim for the same things the US wanted. Like 2 quad 15 inches, all forwards is much more space efficient than 3 triples, 2 4 1 aft. So they were 8. So overall, Jean Bart does have more space where, if I've got hit by a 16-inch shell, it doesn't matter as much.
Yes,
She
but I
is, technically speaking for this fight, a better designed ship.
Also, one thing that Jean Bart does have, like on Dunker, got hit by one of the 381mm shells from Hood, which penetrated her main belt. Then it exploded, and the 40mm bulkhead, which is also present on Jean Bart, but is even thicker there because there it's 50, stopped all of the British shell splinters from killing the machinery, basically.
Yeah,
Which is also
yeah, makes sense. Which, as far as I'm
I
aware,
will-
you
yes,
don't
yes.
I will just
Every hit will deal a little bit less damage.
Okay, so to
I
clarify
will just
this,
give a caveat.
Jean Bart, Jean Bart, so Massachusetts has a greater ability to deal out the hits with the extra gun and the bigger guns,
Mhm.
Yes.
but Jean Bart has a greater ability, especially statistically, to take hits and keep going.
Yeah. Yes. I
It's gonna be
will
harder
agree
to
with
knock
that.
out Jean Bart.
Okay,
it's gonna be some-
I will agree with that assessment. That I am happy to accept. That is because that is an
Well,
accurate
so-
assessment.
So it's going to be an equal fight because it's going to depend on can Massachusetts get a hit on the specific parts of John Bart that is needed to effectively knock it out.
Also, one thing we know, everyone knows that Richelieu's class of gunnery wasn't. Well, they had high dispersion. No one disputes this. But do we give her delay coils like they were planning on, but couldn't because just war
I
nonsense?
presume yes.
It said a fully operational Jean Bart, so I'd say yes.
Okay, that's fine.
So, very quickly, moving on to the next question then. Which
Please
is
do.
annoying because Dragon's now gone. Fantastic.
Yes.
Brandon Larson asks, now that Dragon is here, and he's just gone, you are in overall command of the Starfleet in 2409 and are tasked with patrolling the 4 main quadrants, being the Alpha, Beta, and Gamma quadrants. First of all, Starfleet has never had a presence in all of those quadrants. Alpha and Beta just about, but Delta and Gamma, no. What is your overall strategy and how do you deploy your forces? Even if Dragon was here, he'd probably say that's fundamentally impossible. Starfleet just cannot patrol that area of space. It does not have the ships, the men, or quite frankly the reason to.
I think the official term is they don't have enough species and person. No, I can't even say personnel because that technically isn't an encompassing word for every being within Starfleet.
They don't have enough sailors to do it.
Don't forget they had dolphins on the Enterprise D.
I think it's still classed
Yes,
as
but-
personnel, because if you grant someone personhood, you grant them the ability to be a person within the Federation, regardless of who they are. Like, anybody can be a person in the Federation. It's kind of the
Usually
point.
better if we say entities. There isn't enough entities that work for Starfleet.
Either way, first of all, the Delta and Gamma quadrants are, well, the Gamma quadrant is Dominion territory. No, sorry, the Delta quadrant is Dominion
Delta.
territory. Yeah, that's their job. The Gamma quadrant is just balked, quite frankly. You've got the Borg knocking around.
Well, 2409's when Starfleet starts having a presence in Gamma.
Even so, I don't know enough about the period to
Yeah.
actually like. But I will just say, attempting to patrol that level of space in any meaningful way is beyond Starfleet's resources.
Well, for Gamma, it will be patrol, will be more exploration, scientific missions, and a lot of first contact, dealing with a lot of first contacts. Basically, retracing, just retracing even the Voyager's route is going to be fun for Starfleet to deal with. Or, yeah, Delta, sorry.
In 2409, we weren't at the. They weren't at the Delta Quadrant, or are we talking STO law at this point?
I don't know where we are, but I do feel like patrolling the entire galaxy is beyond the Federation's ability, even at its Star Trek Online nonsense
Yeah,
height. That is just
that's a Dyson Sphere level effort.
and they don't have that. Especially considering the fact that they have to maintain fleets to deal with whatever crisis is popping up this week, which requires forces in fleet strength to deal with.
What do you mean? There's never ships within range higher than Enterprise.
You get what I mean.
But which Enterprise at this point?
Well,
Is it the
canon-wise,
E, or is
it will
the
be
F or the
G. Canon-wise, it will be G right now, since F is retired.
That poxy little Titan A is now the G.
Yeah. Ooh, a modernized
We like to go
Shangri-La.
back to the point where we like to go do exploration instead of, have a big ship that looks like a flagship and make a dinky thing
Terrible.
inside.
Well, now, hang on. Even exploration, having a big ship is better. You have more space for scientific equipment and, stuff.
And in this
Generally.
case, size does matter.
Indeed.
Yeah, the G is not a great ship. She's like,
I still think it would be
Practic-
funnier if they actually dragged the D back out, refit her into that funny dreadnought design, and have her as flagship until
Oh,
they
like the
build
one
new
with the
thing.
the Sentinel Lance laser.
Yeah.
on the,
Knight, I'm
that's what-
aware. I'm aware.
Yeah.
Voyager MacGuffined her way across the Delta Quadrant. Knight. That doesn't change the fact that the Delta Quadrant is still fucked.
It is a bit. I mean, do we have to also include about what they did in season 2 of Picard with the Borg and stuff like that? Because that's going to
Yeah, it's
complicate so many things.
it's all it's messy. It's
Because what they're now starting like some weird sub faction for Borgs and stuff like that. It's just like,
yeah,
oh, no,
it's
please.
You know,
apparently,
season 2 and
according to
season
Mark,
1
the
are
Enterprise
good.
G is an attempt to bury the Enterprise legacy, which I don't think is true. That seems like a bit of a jump.
Hmm?
I
There.
mean, they've got the J. We need to get to the J at some stage.
Yeah, like
they do need
I
to
feel
get
like
into it.
yeah, like I feel like the Enterprise G was a nice little nod at the end of Picard, but nothing more than that. I don't think it's like burying the Enterprise legacy or anything quite so inflammatory
It's not
as
burying
that.
its legacy. We're just merely stating that the ship they chose for the G wasn't particularly well suited to the role it needs to do.
Yeah, but it's not a bad ship. Just not.
It's no,
And-
we're not saying it's a horrible ship. We're just merely stating that it's like, having a county as the flagship of the Royal Navy.
To be fair, it's just all fan service.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like, that because
The reason it had to be
techni-
the reason it had to be renamed to the Enterprise was because it was doing Enterprise level shenanigans, and at that point, if you are doing Enterprise level shenanigans, you kind of have to be the Enterprise, because otherwise, if the ship that is doing the Enterprise level shenanigans is not the Enterprise, then the universe gets unhappy and throws a black hole at the Federation. I mean, that's the real reason. Come on. Like, if the ship that is doing the Enterprise level shenanigans is not the Enterprise, the universe is not happy.
To be honest, it would have been easier if they just got the flipping NX-01 out of just to make it the new.
it is in the museum.
Oh,
Exactly. Enterprise G, NX-01 with the secondary hull.
Wouldn't that be funny? Oh no, there's a crisis going on the other side of the galaxy. We'll see you in about 100 years.
deploy the MacGuffin McMuffin.
Assuming we could even hit warp 5 constantly.
Oh, bloody hell! All right, so next question and the final one
Mhm.
for the catch-up. Brandon Larson asks, "You are a citizen of Panam from the Hunger Games series. What
Oh,
district
boy.
would you choose to live in, or would you choose to live in the capital?" Let me tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm going to the coastline, the East Coast. I'm gonna see if I can find a boat, like either it looks like a yacht or something, and I'm gonna go and see what happened to the UK. I don't care about this weird American pseudo-fascist nonsense. I want to go see what happened to the UK. I'm going, and you can't stop me. I want none of this fascist nonsense. If they want to have the single worst government that has ever existed, which is literally seemingly designed to self-implode, then sure, go nuts. I don't care. But I don't want anything to do with it. Like, it's all silly. It's all stupid. No, I'm leaving. I want to see what happened to the UK and the rest of the world. Like, I have more important things to do now that I'm here.
Under the ghost of Thatcher.
I doubt that highly. I hope the rest of the world are just isolating them and I can get to the UK and be like, so, did that thing in America... You know, it's just... Yeah, you know.
Hmm.
I'm like, there is no invisible barrier, Knight.
I don't know which district they'll probably end up in.
Look, if I can't leave and I have to live in Penang, I'm sorry, but why would I live in any of the districts? I'm going to live in the capital and enjoy the good life. I don't care if anyone else is dying. This is about me.
Does Canada exist in?
Panam is the
yes.
entirety of North America. I think.
Panam owns
Does
whatever
Mexico
remains
exist?
of Canada.
Again,
Yes.
same thing.
Ah,
Like-
Mexico is District 10.
Like,
or what remains of it.
yeah, I'm living in the capital. Why would I voluntarily live in the districts? I'm living in the capital.
move to Brazil.
Like-
That's technically
Like,
Penang.
Here you go.
no, yeah, District 13 is somehow worse than the normal. Like, it's stupid. District
Well,
13
yeah,
is
District
just
13's,
it's
encompasses the old part of Canada, the bad part of Canada.
yeah, it's like there is no freedom in District 13 at all. I mean, literally none. It is a completely authoritarian state. District 13 is only free if you're going to fight against the capital. And I ain't bothered.
But yeah, there's a map of Panam.
Yeah, I will just live in the
Overlay.
capital until the war starts, and then I will go for a walk in the woods with a tent for as long as that war's ongoing.
Technically
Because-
speaking,
Because I'm a capital
Florida's-
citizen, so I can do that.
You're in the mountains.
Florida isn't
so,
technically
you know.
part of something.
Mm-hmm.
Go live in Florida. It's technically not part of a district.
That's underwater.
It's probably because it's underwater.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's boring.
World's fucked.
I know. A lot of the populated part of the U.S. got nuked, basically.
We don't know quite what happened.
Some weird war that happened.
Is it like the same type of war that happened in like Total Recall, the
Something like
remake?
Something like that. I don't know.
Going to Australia.
Your game was a
use the
fun
full-
read.
To go to the UK.
Yeah, I don't know. Hunger Game was a fun read, but never delved too deeply into the lore.
Crazy if like.
That'd be cool.
Hmm.
That would be an interesting one. Like you just have America doing Hunger Games stuff,
Mhm.
Australia becoming a penal colony, and just the UK being whatever the hell the UK is.
Given that a good chunk of the US coast is underwater, I don't know what the UK would actually be at this point. How much would be left?
Who knows?
Well, we all know that Scotland's going to be above water.
Yeah. Most likely.
Scotland for it.
Actually, it wouldn't be surprising if the only part remaining of the UK is the Scottish Highlands.
Is that true? Is that canon? Do we even know what happened to the rest of the world?
English mountain thing.
Yeah.
I also do find it annoying that they have these hovercraft shenanigan things, and they have these hovercraft, they have a massive maglev system, and all of that, and yet for some reason the government of Panam decides we're going to be an authoritarian regime because reasons. And after a civil war, instead of, trying to figure out what caused it, maybe it was our brutal treatment, I don't know, we'll just double down harder and put even more brutal treatment on, in the aftermath of a civil war where we lost a lot of men and equipment, which means we're going to struggle to maintain the brutal treatment again, and we will just have the Hunger Games, which will take children and force them to fight, because that will definitely make people realize, oh, you shouldn't rebel, rather than quite literally making them want to kill us with every fiber of their being. Just whoever wrote the Hunger
Technically,
Games,
it worked for 75 years.
It only worked for 75 years because the writer demanded it did.
Now, to be fair, you make this sound like it's stupid,
It is.
but a lot of things that occur in history, it's a lot more stupider than this.
Nothing has occurred in history that is as monumentally stupid as Panam. There is no nation that has come close to the level of stupidity that was written into that nation.
I would say
Even
Roman
Nazi
Empire
Germany
qualifies for it, but-
is more stable and kinder to its subjects than Panam was.
Okay, well, no, what did I just come back to?
He's trying to proclaim that Pan Am is stupider than some of the worst nation state that has existed in human history.
At least the Germans understood you sometimes had to give a little bit of carrot in order to get people to work with you. You can't just use stick, stick, stick all the time.
I want to disagree with that one.
To be fair, actually, is Panam worse than Soviet Russia under Stalin?
Yes! So much worse.
I don't know
Brandon says
about
no.
that.
The
one.
reason I'm not saying that Panam...
No,
I'm
I
not
don't think
saying that Panam is... Like, I'm not saying that anything's morally better. What I'm saying is that Nazi Germany would have lasted longer in a peacetime environment than Panam should have. Panam should not have lasted 75 years.
I'm going to be real with you. Panam gives me East India Company vibes.
Yeah,
It's not even that. It's just... It's just...
No, I'm sorry. If you replace the capital with British Bengal and the mass concentration of wealth that happened there,
Yeah, but at least they had carrot and stick approaches, which makes more sense than, like, you know what Panam is.
They didn't.
Like, and also the East India Company didn't take people's children and force them to fight in Hunger Games for the amusement of the ruling British East India Company personnel, did they? Nor did
but
they.
they...
No.
Are you
probably
aware of
did.
some of the deals the British East India Company made with the Indian Rajas
I'm aware
about their armies that were totally not Janissaries?
I'm aware, but it still makes more sense than it's not the same, Foxo. It's not the same thing. That's
But it's close enough.
That's conscription.
It's close enough
That's
to be...
that's conscription.
Yeah, but
That's the difference.
conscripting 6-year-olds to fight each other?
No, not to fight each other. That's not what conscription is.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the deals the British East Indian EIC's government did with the Indian Rajas, where they quite literally took lower caste children.
Knight, politely, Knight, I know. I was talking on an economic and stability basis, not morally, when it comes to Panam. Like, in terms of economic and stability, Nazi Germany and its Reichskommissariats would have lasted longer than Panam realistically should have done.
No, it wouldn't.
It absolutely would have, because Panam just literally sticks their heads into the ground. The Germans were at least willing to do a little bit of give and take.
Right.
Whereas all Panam is, it's one stupid writer thinking, how do authoritarian
Lee,
states
don't
work?
insult the writers. It's the setting to a book about a teenage love story.
Like, I'm
think
sorry,
Twilight's
but
written
he
that
could
too.
have
But
he
I'm
could
so-
have put a little bit more work in. A little bit more work
No,
wouldn't
no,
have gone amiss.
Okay. Book aside, I am appalled by your view of Nazi Germany.
I mean, it's a horrific state, which is brutal, but in terms
I'm talking about your view of the political system and how the nation actually ran.
it was a kleptocracy that barely crumbled along.
It was a fucking cult.
Well, yes, I'm aware of that. I'm absolutely aware of that. That's how little I think of Panam as a concept. That's how flawed it is. That's how little stock I put in the writing.
The issue with Panam is that it's loosely based off of European feudalism. And arguably, arguably it can be compared to the Indian caste system of the 17th and 18th century. States like the Mughals that have a lot of, I'm going to say, not intentional parallels to Pan have existed, and existed for hundreds of years. Because look at China, and to a degree, look at the Chinese provinces,
Like, I'm not
especially the non-Yellow River ones,
I'm not disagreeing with
and look
that.
at Indian history.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. The problem I have is that literally, like, in a developed, it works in a medieval concept. You can't do it as a democracy. You're just saying, yes, rebellion every 2 years, and an economic system that fundamentally doesn't work.
When is Pan Am a democracy?
Right. Annam is a democracy in the same way that ancient Athens was a democracy.
I am aware of that. However, the problem is people are aware of democratic history. They know what's come before. You can't reimpose a system like that and expect it to work. It doesn't. And yes, I'm aware Pan Am does suffer a civil war and then another civil war, but the 75 years in between, where every year you take children from the districts and force them to fight each other, that should have resulted in another rebellion the immediate year afterwards.
No.
Yes.
Because, right. You say they would have rebelled,
Oh,
but I don't agree with this. I am just playing devil's advocate here. But rebel with what?
The capital is devastated by the war. They could rebel with anything they lay their hands on. I'm sorry. Yes, our children are being taken away, and any one of our childs could be next. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. At that point, you've passed the point where humans are willing to just
when
accept
people from the capital have guns and you don't,
when the people from the capital are exhausted and barely won the war and only won because City District 13 noped out. Yeah, I'm sorry.
yes, but when the government that's doing it has guns and you don't.
Yeah, but there are like one of them to every 40 of us, if not more, and I'm sure we can get guns.
yeah,
And
it's
one
like
guy with an
the same
M16
tax
could
in
kill
China.
reliably 20 people in a single magazine.
Foxo, the whole Pan Am concept is silly, and it would have resulted in a rebellion
It's
within a year.
silly, it's just not as stupid as impossible as you think it is.
It fundamentally is. Also, to be frank with you, the comeback from the rebellion that they did when District 13 noped out was daft in the extreme. If they were losing, District 13 noping out, even if they're taking the manufacturing base with them, the capital was pushed back to the capital. There should have been no way they bounce back. Even if the rebels have had their supplies cut off fundamentally, they should have enough left to deliver the killing blow. Like, this whole bounce back from the edge of defeat is just silly. I get why it had to happen, because they needed the book to go on.
All I'll say, Fleet, before we move on, is that weirder things have happened in civil wars.
Not with the overwhelming numbers we're talking about here.
Weirder things have happened in civil wars, Fleet.
It's an unrealistic premise, Foxo. You can't defend it, so stop trying.
No. My to remind you that one guy with 2,000 blokes overturned most Italian governments.
Yeah, that was
in
different.
about a matter of 3 to 4 years.
Yes, that was different, though. The Southern Expedition was riding on popular sentiment within those governments. The capital has no popular sentiment to ride on. Yes, put down your weapons and we will kill you and oppress you and take your children to fight for us in games that we will watch. Yeah, sure, that message is going to resonate, innit?
That won't, but your agricultural base has collapsed. You're starving. You're not getting industrialized goods. Your workforce is out fighting in the fields. And mention you're starving. Your kids are starving. We're offering you a chance to end this war and go back to status quo.
Honestly, at that point, you would burn the nation to the ground rather than return to status quo.
Most people won't.
Anyone with half a spine would. And the rest would be traitors, which would therefore mean they should go up against the wall as well.
Alright. How about we
Most
move back
people don't
over
have
to
spines.
questions and topics
Yeah,
more
next
related to our guest's expertise?
So again, as I've said, the panel agrees. Hunger Games, fundamentally
No, we don't.
stupid. Yes, you do.
No, we
Moving
don't.
on.
No, I don't.
Moving on.
Moving swiftly on.
That was actually the last question we had. Yeah. It's
So
probably-
give us new questions.
yeah, we'll
We've
take a
got a
few.
little bit
We
of
will.
time.
We will take a few new questions, and I will
What
cherry
if the
pick.
nation's militaries and superpowers from Strange World and World on Fire were teleported to the present day and fought all nations of the Earth?
World on Fire. PW. What is that?
Project Wingman.
Oh, well, World on Fire
Interesting.
is fundamentally. Yes, they have certain funny shenanigans, but numbers-wise, it's a post-apocalyptic setting. The amount
not.
of the entire Ring of Fire goes kabang, and the whole
It went
project.
kabang
It goes
thousands
from
of
500 years ago.
Yeah, and it's a post-apocalyptic setting.
Yeah, but I will be.
But it depends. Does Earth get cordium, Brandon?
If it- I mean,
Probably
if
Earth
it-
gets cord.
Problem is, you also got Strange Reel as well, and all the military's coming from that. And at that point, Earth just loses. I'm sorry, Earth just loses. It's not
Yeah.
even funny. Like,
So
the amount of air power that Strange Reel wields, the amount of military assets Strange Reel wields, add into that things from Project Wingman, and the forces available to them. Earth just loses. We can't mobilize fast enough to counter it. We're talking 5th generation fighters in tens of thousands of numbers. We're talking flying super weapons that can obliterate air forces with a snap of their fingers. We're talking area denial assets that can close down entire regions of airspace and ground. It's over.
if Strange Reel and Wingman are hostile to each other,
That's different. Yeah, that's different.
that's different because I'd argue that World on Fire can stand up to Strange Reel. Tell the Federation's got the resources and the air fleet.
The problem
Yes.
you've got is that certain airships within Strange Reel are basically flat counters to the aerial fleets of Project Wingman. I can think of one ship in particular that just flat out counters every single aerial
Yeah, that's
fleet.
not good.
No, God, no. Not at all. Gleipnir. The Gleipnir from Skies of Deception. That thing has shockwave ballistic missiles, and when they go off, they can sweep an entire area of aerial assets, just with a snap of its fingers. Now, and one of those going off will just knock every single airship within a 10-mile radius from the blast point out of the air. So at that point, if they're flying in, no, it will. It flat out will. No, it flat out will. It flat out will. I don't.
Fleet. The battle cruisers in the Ace Combat DLC that are taken over to invade Siberia by Bitchface. That you fight as K9 Squadron.
Either way, yes, go on.
No, those tank blast waves from nuclear warheads going off beneath them when they're less than 100 meters away from the ground.
That's just silly.
Like-
That's aggressive levels of silly. That is. There's no way those ships fly, Cordium or not. I don't care. That is there is no way those ships fly. That's aggressively silly. That is... Like, I could believe them being tough enough to resist small arms fire, except at certain key points. I can believe that. I can also believe them having the ability to resist certain missile strikes. I can absolutely believe that. But resisting atomic weapons going off, and the shockwave from
Nearby, yes.
there's no... When you're... How far nearby? And what yield?
We're talking within half a kilometer.
And what yield was the atomic weapon?
3 of them wipe out a major city.
That's bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on that. It's just
Yeah,
like
which is-
I can
well, it's
I
two
can
bullshit
suspend.
settings that are gonna be going against each other.
Yeah, but there's a difference with the
And-
Strange Reels assets are bullshit, but they tend to follow some semblance of physics and in terms of, of resistance to things. I just no, there is a certain level of bullshit I'm willing to accept, and we have now passed that point. If that's what those Cordium-driven airships can deal with.
Because how you take down one of the Cordium-driven... It's not all the airships, it's specifically the battle cruisers. The biggest, the baddest, and technically illegal, so there's 4 of them in the world. Airships.
Yeah, Knights, I'm aware of the limitations of the SWBM. I know that 2 of Griffer's squadron survived the attack by diving down. The airships fundamentally can't do that, and the Gleipnir can just salvo off enough SWBMs for certain altitude brackets to just cover an area before retiring for resupply.
But and it's like, don't get me wrong, the battle cruisers don't die to the blast wave of the nuclear weapons. They're such as the one at the end of the DLC. It's going down.
Oh, so in theory,
It's damaged quite badly, and it's the whole reason K9's able to get in close to it, close enough to kill it.
Yeah, fair enough. It's one of those things where we're dealing with 2, like, if it's, like, either one of them can spare, like, a limited amount of their capability and just wipe us out. I mean, the Gleipnir has active camouflage, for Christ's sake, which makes it invisible.
I would want to see Eminent Domain versus an Arsenal bird.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, Eminent Domain would just go, surprise, fuckface, and just, like, 12 railgun rounds through the shield into the central core. It's like, surprise, fuckface!
Yeah, but the Arsenal bird has the shield and has the massive fucker laser.
It does, but 12 railgun strikes to the face. You're basically applying equivalent pressure to the, especially if they get the targeting right. You're applying equivalent pressure to as the single slug that the Stonehenge round was.
No.
Nowhere near.
Eminent Domain's no. If Eminent Domain's guns are that powerful, she would have soloed the entire campaign herself.
Well, the thing is, she did solo entire fleets by herself with those railguns. That's what I'm saying. They are demonstrably powerful, and it's not just about. It's about all the rounds at once. You're talking. It's about absorbing the kinetic energy. That's the thing. You are applying probably as much kinetic energy with the 12 rounds as you would be with for the shield to mitigate as the single round from the Stonehenge gun was. And if that can drop the shields on, if that can crack the shields of the Arsenal bird, then even if the first salvo doesn't get through, then either Eminent Domain secondaries or another salvo from those guns will finish the job.
It depends, because Eminent Domain's just railguns' best feat is the ability to shoot down hypersonics.
And at that point, if it can do that, then we are talking about velocities that I am fairly confident in my statement.
Facts. It's just according to actual game devs, she won the fleet engagements because the missiles were a primary weapon.
Oh no, I get
Like
that.
railgunning the hypersonics that came after her.
Oh yeah, I get that. It's just, like at that point, I'm very confident in my statement. So let me see.
And it takes you being a psychopathic mute with access to nuclear weapons to sink her sister ship.
Yep.
I love Project Wingman. Cordium's just funny.
Yes.
Cordium is indeed
The
funny.
funny. Also, I have the funniest video I've ever seen was the funny whimsical clown honk sound effects over the spinny Cordium jet doing funny shenanigans. That was I have lost it. I have lost it. I
The
have
titular Project Wingman.
yeah. I have lost that video, but it's just I couldn't stop laughing at it for ages. It's like as it spins out of the.
Because you can do the campaign after you've done it first time in your game plus with settings, and there's a setting which doubles the amount of enemies.
Oh god.
If you do it on the hardest difficulty, double the settings. When you go to the final boss fight, there is 2 of Project Wingman.
Oh good lord.
And have you seen the sensory overload meme? Where it's just the guy getting constantly flashbanged, looped.
Yeah. YouTube
It's just
Minecraft.
that from all the
I will
micro
be.
missiles.
Yeah, so I will be cherry picking questions here very quickly because I'm not gonna do all of them. I'm just gonna cherry pick ones I think would be fun to answer. As I said when we were doing this already, I'm gonna cherry pick questions. But YouTube question cherry pick. YouTube Minecraft watcher. Let's say. No, actually, no, it's a bit silly. Actually, this is a good topic for discussion. We can discuss why the concept no longer works in the modern era. If modernized, how effective would a Hilfkreuzer be in modern times? Modern intelligence, weapons, warfare systems, SAMs, guided torpedoes, updated, and modern guns. So I think James, as a merchant ship officer, would you probably like to explain why modern armed merchant cruisers in the traditional sense don't really work?
To start off with, every single ship nowadays is multinational crew. Kind of an issue. You tend to have most of the deck ratings to either be from the Philippines, Pakistan, Malaysia, basically anywhere that they can pay not that much money for, just to get bodies in places. So yeah, there's that. If you're talking proper merchant ships, i.e. container ships, bulk carriers, and tankers, and you want to turn those into a warship, the container ship is probably the best option because they're fast and the amount of weapon systems you can put on board them hidden in containers. However, there's a big thing called international law. You're not really allowed to do that anymore, even though I have considered the possibility of how to wipe an entire country off the face of a map using the MSC Arena, but hey ho. Yeah, it's massively against the international law. Is that an acceptable answer?
So, is there anything stopping you from doing it if you say through international law in a wood chipper?
So, technically speaking, the Russians. Sorry, this is getting into a little bit of modern politics. The Russians have technically done it because they have the KH-35 weapon system, basically Caliber, specifically SSN-25 Switchblade and 27 Sizzler, is capable of being launched out of a erectable launcher which is hidden inside a container. Technically speaking, when you transport any container around the world, you have a manifest which is given to the ship which will state what is in the container. Doesn't necessarily mean it shows exactly what's inside the container. You could say it's a car, but in reality it could be a quad-pack missile system. So, as long as you don't look in the container and you don't snip the lock off it, because you could technically, if you do, you then go against the contract, and there's a load of contractual issues with that. So, if you don't snip it off, you can technically get away with it.
So where are we?
Just
So
the mental image of someone importing a car and getting a quad-back caliber launcher instead.
You can do that because, because in theory, port state control can't technically look into the containers unless they have an official warrant to enter the container. So, yeah, you can get away with it as long as the missile system is actually on the top. tier of containers. If it's not, you have a bit of an issue trying to fire anything.
Yeah. And also, you've also run into the problem that with the way things are, you really, 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 really do not want to get into the practice of people shooting at merchant ships during wartime anymore. Like, this is the thing. One of the things that people don't seem to realize is that given the way wars work now, and the way trade happens, you really don't want to start shooting at ships, or encourage people to shoot at ships carrying merchant traffic, if you can avoid it. You want to discourage them from going places, but A, you want to give plenty of warning that's what you're doing, and B, you need to really be careful what exactly you shoot at. Unless you're completely morally ambivalent and can absorb the impact of doing something morally reprehensible, like blocking grain shipments, for example. And polluting the sea by blowing up an oil tanker. It's basically with the way the amount of merchant traffic has decreased, and the interconnected nature of the world in relation to food security and other securities has grown, it has become less and less feasible to do a war against trade on the high seas in the way you used to be able to do it. In fact, it might be fundamentally detrimental to both sides for it to be waged.
So, for example, if you were, say... Sorry about modern politics, but if you were, say, Russia, and you decided you're at war with Ukraine, and you decided to hit, say, grain shipments...
Wow, this hypothetical is this hypothetical is becoming less hypothetical by the minute.
And you did it consistently. You very quickly would widen the scope of your armed agitation to a lot of Africa.
Like Egypt might join the war.
But Egypt, a lot of sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of North Africa, a lot of and South Africa are pretty much reliant on Ukraino-Polish grain nowadays.
Yeah, this is the thing.
Population.
This is the thing. If that had happened consistently, and Ukraine hadn't basically made the Russians fail, Egypt would, quite frankly, have got into the Black Sea and started escorting grain shipments out themselves, and literally would have gone to the Russians, try me.
One of the things that got the Russians to stop was the Egyptian government going, you keep doing this, we block the Suez Canal to all ships that are related to you that have docked in your port in the last 5 years.
That's a statement.
To be fair, actually, also the Montague Convention also would stop the Egyptians going through, because I'm pretty sure they still have the embargo where no warship of any nation, bar ones that are currently border the Black Sea, bar the Russians, can enter the Black Sea. I
think it's only belligerent warships that they've barred. So if Egypt says we're going in to, make sure our people can get grain shipments, and it also, it's also a win for the Turks. They get an easy diplomatic win by doing that, if that was the circumstance that was happening, and B, it's basically a giant middle finger to the Russians, which also helps the Turks as well. It's basically, there's no downside for Turkey to do that, because Egypt fundamentally is not a naval or geopolitical threat to Turkey. It's just not, the two states have very little they quarrel over right now.
It's still a geopolitical threat because the Egyptians repeatedly threatened to cut the Turks off from the Suez Canal. Whenever they just don't like it.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, to be fair, though, I will point out that's the Egyptians' modus operandi.
From policy.
Yeah, that's the Egyptians' modus operandi whenever anything goes shenanigany.
So, to go back to the question, very much a case of, as I understand it, maybe I can quote me on this. Essentially, with how modern day trade works with crews, if you start to attack merchant ships, you're going to massively expand the opponents you're fighting.
If it
Given
goes
the
badly
independent-
wrong. If it goes badly
Yep.
wrong, yes.
Because you start killing. Oh god.
So luckily enough, when the Ukraine war started and there was a few merchant ships that were attacked in the anchorage off Odessa, luckily enough, no one actually died in that situation. But there was definitely the escalation that if someone did die, i.e. Filipinos or Malaysians or any of that nature, then things would have got a lot worse for the Russians. And specifically because the Russians do tend to use Malaysia and nations around that area to build their influence. They have ships that dock in there a lot of the times. If you keep an eye on the Pac fleet, it would have been very bad for them. So take that into consideration whenever someone else starts lobbing missiles and blows ships up and they start killing crews. You tend to then have said nations then go, well, what the fuck are you doing? You just murdered one of our lads. International instant.
Yeah,
Shit
it's
goes down.
Yes,
the
but-
trade war in the traditional sense is no longer really viable. Who the
But
fuck
since you
edited
start-
my? Oh, you cheeky fuckacy cube! You son of a bitch!
But say you make the mistake of hitting and killing several Americans on these ships
Ooh.
that you didn't know in advance they were Americans.
Oh boy, you're in trouble.
I think it's time to bend down and pull your trousers down, lads.
Yeah, that's honestly the American response to that wouldn't be war. It would just be you no longer have a navy.
But yeah, or say if you did that to someone in, say, some of the Chinese based or South Korean based crews.
So, this is the weird situation because there's a lot of Chinese crews on a lot of Chinese ships. And whenever. Mind. Apologies for the dog. There's a lot of Chinese ships that tend to sink with a lot of Chinese crew, and no one really seems to bat an eyelid over there.
Really?
Yeah, now granted, obviously not being shot at with missiles, and some of them are collisions with other ships, but from what I've seen in maritime in circles, no one really seems to care.
I would just hope that it's different when someone actively starts shooting at them.
Well, to be fair, Darge, a good portion of the time, some of the Chinese ships are not in places where they should be in.
Yeah, the
And yeah, they probably just also bought their tickets, so it's kind of a bit dodgy.
yeah, and I would
Dodgy,
I would also point out the fact that the how to describe it? Nope, it's gone. My head's gone.
But you would still hope that if they were shot at, the Chinese would do something.
I mean, they
Even
have
if they don't
moved-
care about the people,
they have
they don't
committed.
care about the loss of face about it.
Yeah, they have. There's a reason why they have committed some assets to the Red Sea Protection Force. They've done very little with them, but they have committed the assets there.
But they're showing face.
Yeah,
To be fair, they have had the Naval Expeditionary Task Force there for at least 15 years, give or take.
yeah, but
So
they
it's nothing new that
they
was-
bulked it up. They bulked it up with the Houthis doing shenanigans.
Yeah, but even still, when I'm pretty sure there's a few ships that had Chinese crews on board and they were actually fired upon. I don't think the Chinese really did much
Hmm.
because they always have a 052 Delta. They always have a Shanghai 2, and they always have a tanker there. I don't really think they did much in ways of
Yeah.
upgrading that force or maneuvering ships into positions to protect them. It always tended to be the Europeans and the Americans who were doing the escort. The Chinese just sat back and just watched with the Iranians.
Just very quickly, while we're just talking about the Middle East and stuff, the Egyptian Navy is a lot more potent than you think when you think Egyptian Navy. 4 modern diesel boats, 4 Romeos, which is not ideal, but still. 2 Mistral class helicopter landing docks.
I'm familiar with those two.
one French Frem, 2 Italian Frems, 4 Mako A200s, 4 Perrys, and 2 Noxes. Then they've got 7 Corvettes, 4 modern ones, which are Going 2 5000s, 2 Spanish ships, and 2 Pohang class ships. And they've also got... Okay, the Egyptian fleet is just big. It's just big. Why do they have so much stuff?
It's almost like Turkey's on the other side of the sea.
I get
Hmm.
that.
Almost like their main economic lifeline's a naval thing.
It's,
be fair,
it's almost like they're neighbors with Israel.
That too. That too.
Yeah. The
Apparently,
Minstrels
according
used
to
be
this-
the Sevastopol and Vladivostok.
Yeah, apparently
They're
they...
meant to be for the Russians.
Oh yes, they were, weren't they?
Yeah.
And the
That's
Turk...
why the Russians are now building the Ivan Rogovs, which are
Yeah.
just dodgy, sodding things.
And the Egypt...
Which-
Didn't
I've got to
the,
ask
didn't the Egyptians snap them up at a bargain price?
Pretty much, yeah.
Lucky that...
I've got to ask. Is anyone here familiar with the modern Egyptian navy? Of like the past 60 years.
They got a clobbering missile, didn't they, from the Israelis at one point?
Because I'm just wondering, does the Egyptian navy suffer from a lot the same issues the Egyptian army and a lot of Arab armies suffer from?
From what I'm aware, the Egyptian fleet is a fairly... Because the Egyptian navy has actually been involved in actually modern combats post World War II, they actually have a fairly meritocratic officer corps, from what I'm aware. They're not. They've also always been a very independent branch. I mean, for example, they have their own naval academy. They've had one since 1946. Like it's, I have no reason to believe, that the Egyptians are in any way, corrupt or have any of the issues that you sometimes associate with Arab armies. I mean, they're clearly, they very clearly are funding it. I mean, they ordered 2 brand new Frems in 2020. They ordered 6 Mako A200s in 2019. There's clearly some money going into the Egyptian fleet. But I don't know if that's coming at the expense of the army. Or the Air Force.
Because I'm just curious, because the Egyptian army and other Arab armies in general are infamous for being overbloated and poor maintenance, with a lot of hierarchy issues and a lot of lack of NCOs or competent NCOs.
Well, thing is, what you need to look at is you need to look at how the Egyptian army and its structure have changed since the Arab Spring. That would be the key, which we don't know. We don't know if there's been any reforms that have taken place. If you would have to have a detailed dive into that, and short of going up to the intelligence services and asking, we don't know. Okay, yeah. So the Egyptian army has 1,000 Abrams knocking around.
Yeah.
All right.
It's almost like they had a revolution.
Boss, would you be up for letting me stream Pokemon Fleet?
Let me just wind down the stream, which I'm about to do.
They got a bunch of Abrams from the U.S. They're like the old Abrams as well, without any DU
Are
stuff.
they the A1s?
Yeah,
No, I
M1A1s.
think they're-
Yeah, they
got some
they
more
were
to go.
supposed to get M1A1 SA, but they didn't get any.
Yeah.
I'm just looking. Yeah, damn. Okay, they have M270. Damn. Okay.
The Egyptian army is mostly American equipment based because that's who they're buying from.
Yeah, they're very clearly moving away from. They have a towed gun park, which is mostly Soviet, but they are very clearly moving away from towed guns towards self-propelled. They've got a big order on for K9 Thunder.
Well,
And I'm just
I'm
gonna
having a
check.
job.
I'm just gonna check the Air Force real quick.
They got
unless
F-16s.
for some reason the Department of Energy decides that they don't want me, but I have a new job.
Hey!
Nice.
Congratulations!
I almost got back into.
Oh. Whoops.
Pays the same as the old job.
I'm just
Well,
curious why you said you got sent to Kathmandu.
Did Discord crash again?
No.
No.
Ah, yes. The wedge. Of course, the wedge.
Hello?
was mentioned.
Hello.
That's Sweden. Yes.
Hello.
Oh, good lord. Okay. Honestly, the Egyptian Air Force is yeah, that's a lot
is it?
more. Yeah. Okay.
They
So
got a lot
they
from
have-
F-16s.
Yeah, they do. But they also have Mirage 5, Mirage 2000, and then they're ordering Rafale. They have 24 right now, and they've got 30 on order.
Yeah.
So the Egyptian Air Force. Oh yeah, and they've got at least like nearly 200 F-16 of various marks. Just all right. Oh, and 46 MiG-29. Just to round it out. Just why not? Why, we're going for broke. Let's go.
And now all of this is funded by the guy that bought a property in Egypt.
Yeah.
What?
God damn you.
I feel. No, but seriously, yeah, but it's funny though. Like the Egyptian armed forces, especially moving into the 21st century, they've really gone for modernization in a big way.
Now, to be fair, even during the older Arab days, they still had one of the bigger militaries in the Arab world.
I mean, yeah, but it's just it does surprise me every time you look at them and they go, well, they decided they wanted everything and they went and they took it. They walked up.
It's almost like they have some pretty nasty neighbors around.
Yeah, they walked up to the Russians, the French, and the British, and everyone with a massive briefcase full of money, and said, "I will buy everything."
That reminds me.
They still operate swing fire.
Wasn't Egypt, the Egyptian Air Force, the only ones that really stood up to the Israelis in the Six-Day War? They just put up a fight.
Not during 6 Day. It took the lessons they learned in 6 Day to apply to Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur was better, mostly because that's the Egyptian seizing the initial initiative.
But
Six Day War did not go well for Egypt because they never had the initiative. They got pounded into the ground right on the first day. There basically wasn't much of an Egyptian Air Force afterwards.
Yeah, they
Yom Kippur,
fundamentally learned the lessons. They lured the Israelis into traps, I believe, baited with Shilkas and SA-6s.
Ugh.
Yeah, that was not a good day to be an Israeli pilot. Because if you flew high into the trap, the SA-6 nailed you. If you flew low into the trap, the Shilka got you. The Russians got a lot of good intel on how their air defense systems worked during that war.
That was like combined air defenses overpowered as hell.
It was. It absolutely was. Also, the Egyptians had practiced it, so they kind of knew what they were doing. Right, so we've been but yes, Brandon Larson, the SA-2s were valuable, but in the ambush role, the SA-6s on their mobile tracked chassis and the Shilkas were what mattered, because it meant they could be rapidly moved to a position the Egyptians wanted to lay an ambush in, whereas an SA2 is a little ungainly, shall we say, to move around rapidly. Oh dear. Right. Thank you everybody for coming on YouTube. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you to all of my co-host panel. Hope everyone's enjoyed. Take care. I will catch you all on the YouTube audience on Monday. If you're around on Twitch, obviously tune in on Sunday for Karelia, where Fleet will once more attempt to, after being ill last weekend, and not really doing too much streaming, to batter the Russians out of Karelia.